Okay, I'm gonna kick this off. I just want to say hi and welcome everyone. This is Taking the Stage and Hitting the Road, Accessibility for Disabled Musicians. I'm Valerie Grich. I use she, her pronouns. I'm calling from Matinecock land that was colonized in the 17th century to eventually become Queens, New York City. For anyone who can't see me, I am a 31-year-old white woman with mid-length brown and blue curly hair, and I'm wearing a black top with pink and orange flowers. I'm sitting in front of a light blue wall. I'm currently serving as Vice President of Half Access. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to making live music accessible. I will be your moderator for today's panel as part of our summer series called From the Crowd to the Stage. After today's panel, we will be hosting a discussion space for attendees on our Discord server. And we're also very excited to announce that Half Access is now open to volunteers. So if that's anything you feel like getting involved with, we would love to have you. We'd like to thank Music Portland for running tech for this series and Hopeless Records and Subsidy for sponsoring it. ASL interpretation for today is provided by Steffi and Selena from Fingers Crossed Interpreting. Ooh, I just lost my notes. So sorry. Closed captions are available by turning them on at the bottom of your screen. It is fitting that our panel today is occurring during Disability Pride Month. This past Monday, July 26th, marked the 31st anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, which is a federal civil rights law that prohibits discrimination based on disability. Music venues fall under Title III of the ADA, as they are public accommodations and commercial facilities. This means that no individual may be discriminated against on the basis of their disability with regards to the full and equal enjoyment of goods, services, and facilities. However, if you're a disabled music fan, musician, or crew member, you are probably well aware that the ADA has many loopholes. And these allow venues to remain inaccessible and provide flimsy accommodations, if any at all. And this is why it's so important that we keep accessibility in mind going forward, especially in a world that's struggling to manage a pandemic. Now, not only do disabled folks have to worry about whether they can even get into a venue to work or enjoy a show, they must now worry about the threat of COVID-19 as well. For today's panel on accessibility for disabled musicians, we are joined by an incredible group of people whose stories and work will move you as much as they have moved the rest of the Half Access board, I'm sure. So with that, I will allow them to introduce themselves. Let's kick it off with Eric.
Hey, my name's Eric. I'm 39 years old. I'm out here on Duwamish and coastal Salish lands up in Seattle. I go by he, him, and I've been a touring musician for longer than 20 years, and in 14 of those years, I've been a wheelchair user as a T4 paraplegic. In a chair, I've toured over 30 countries, all 50 states, many times over. Put a lot of miles on a lot of airplanes and a lot of buses, and been all over the place. And I'll pass the mic along. Thank you. Thanks for letting me hang out today.
Molly, would you like to go next?
Sure. My name's Molly Joyce. I use she, her pronouns. I'm coming from Grand Junction, Colorado today. And I am a white, light-skinned female with blue eyes and shorter brown hair. Today I'm wearing a black shirt with a kind of circle necklace. I'm in a room with a window behind me. And I'm active as a composer and performer. I have an impaired left hand from a car accident about 20 years ago. So I'm primarily active as a composer, writing for other people, but also perform a lot on this vintage toy organ instrument I like that fits my hands better, and also sing with the instrument. I'm really happy to be here today.
Kyle, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Kyle. I use he, him pronouns. I'm currently in New Mexico. I've been here in Santa Fe for a little bit now working on a project, but I live in LA. I'm from Detroit, so I'm kind of all over the place. My hotel room has some stock art behind me. I'm a 37-year-old white male, and I'm a touring musician. I played in a band called Fireworks, and we toured for close to a decade. And I'm missing most of the fingers on my right hand. I was born that way. And thanks for having me.
Priya, why don't you run us out?
Okay, thank you. First of all, thanks to Half Access for having me. My name is Priya Ray. I'm a brown-skinned woman with shorter dark brown hair. I'm 53 years old. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm wearing a gray shirt and I don't know, whatever you can see on the screen's it's actually a picture of Ganesh, the Indian god, but it's got a bunch of colors, yellow and red all over it. And behind me, I'm in my apartment and I have some thrift store artwork I found and some artwork by my friends behind me hanging on the wall. And and I am a musician. I play violin. I play a violin in a DIY band that I've been in for like 35 years or something like that. It's called Creamy with a K, Electric with an L, Santa. And we have like an underground following in the DIY community. And I started my journey to activism for disability because I had a spinal cord injury in 1999, a T12L1 spinal cord injury. And when I re-entered the DIY community, I noticed inaccessibility. So I decided I need to tell people about it. And that's it for me. Thank you so much. Bye. Or mute.
Wonderful. So we will jump right into our questions. So the first question is, what instruments do you play, and how does your disability affect how you play them or how you perform live, if at all? Kyle, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I mostly, like touring wise, I would play bass. I play guitar, and that's probably what I play most nowadays. I can play piano a little bit. And yeah, it was, a learning curve to learn, but it just kind of came naturally. And I just picked up a guitar when I was a kid, and I just started like strumming with my thumb, and was able to use the nail as like a pick. And eventually I just kind of found my style. And as I got more serious about it, I ended up getting like a prosthesis type device with a pick on it, and that kind of improved the tone of it. But it didn't really. It kind of helped me playing like mentally, but it didn't really help with the actual disability or anything. It just kind of was a little more sturdy and a little less painful on me, I guess. But I could play the same. And yeah, I think did I answer all the questions?
You did.
Okay, cool.
Priya, would you like to go next?
Sure. I play violin. I've been playing that since I was a kid. And then I don't know, like after I graduated high school and went to college, I don't know, I kind of stopped playing it for a while. And then I actually met my partner, and he was in a band, and then his band broke up, and he's like, oh, you play this violin, why don't we jam and see what happens? And then we just started a band after that. And so I do have the experience of playing not disabled as opposed to disabled. And the one thing, there's something about standing and playing the violin that was really awesome. So in the wheelchair, I don't really have to modify too much about my instrument, but I really like to have my feet on the ground, even seated for some reason. I don't know, I feel weird playing it with, with my feet just on the foot plate. So I really have to, I don't know, I feel more comfortable having my feet on the ground. I don't know why, if there's any validity to that. And then the other thing, because I play a lot of DIY spaces, so it's more like smaller spaces like record stores or people's houses that are often quite inaccessible. And I have a lot of ability, so I can get into spaces, but if I can't, then my bandmates, will carry me and stuff like that. And yeah, like the inaccessibility of, and I've played bigger places too, and their stages are also inaccessible. So it's not only the DIY spaces where the stages are inaccessible. And so yeah, that's like, and so really what I have to do is I just have to, because the DIY spaces, sometimes there isn't a stage, or if there is, the crowds get a little rowdy. And one show, like the crowd, like actually, I was on a stage, but they got so rowdy, they actually came onto the stage and pushed me backwards in my wheelchair. And usually I lock it, but for some reason I didn't do it this time. And I was really happy because that would have totally flipped over backwards, but instead I got pushed backwards and into the drum set. So really, I have to kind of pay attention what the crowd is doing when I'm playing. So that's really what I have to do as far as my disability and playing live. So thank you.
Eric, would you like to go next?
Yeah. So primarily as a touring musician, I play guitar. I'm a multi-instrumentalist and a producer. And I'm mostly self-taught, which I feel lends itself to kind of adaptability. I feel fortunate not to kind of be beholden to any kind of constrictions in terms of how I think an instrument is supposed to be played or held or anything like that. So, I took the lessons I had on piano as a kid, and I was never a great piano player, but I can tear it up on a synthesizer, and I can find my textures and things like that. I'm next to a Moog synthesizer. Shout out to Asheville. Moog factories right there. I've got a toy organ back there. Shout out to Molly. So I'm an artist and kind of a collector of sounds. I'm also fortunate enough to be able to tour with a fair amount of help. So I do have a team that's kind of able to assemble my rig in a somewhat predictable way from night to night. So at T4, I've got shoulders and I've got my hands, but balance can sometimes be an issue. So just, as a singer and a player, having my microphone in the right spot every night is way more important than it was when I wasn't sitting in a chair. And figuring out what kind of guitar profiles and shapes fit best on the lap, figuring out what to do with the pedal board and how many pedals I'm gonna involve, and whether they're on a stand or on a table or attached to the instrument itself. It's kind of a ever evolving process. And like I said, the adaptability of being self-taught has kind of allowed me to have a 360 approach to some of this stuff and not get too locked into one school of how it gets done or another.
Awesome. How about you, Molly?
Yeah, so I primarily play this kind of vintage toy organ instrument, which I'd love to see Eric's if I could. It has these chord buttons on the left-hand side and keyboard part on the right-hand side. And at least to my knowledge, they're manufactured more in the 1960s, 70s, like they're not manufactured as much anymore. So I initially discovered it on my favorite website, eBay, and I kind of bought them up just to like have an excess of them and have parts ready. They're only about $100 each. And when I first bought it, I discovered it in undergraduate studies when I was in New York, and I always joke it was kind of my kind of ticket to Brooklyn, if you will, because it was cute and vintage and out of tune. But it really stayed as kind of an accessory for me for a while. I thought it wasn't significant enough to pursue kind of a solo practice on. However, this really changed once I got to grad school and interfaced with disability studies and started performing on it more. I kind of realized it was almost made for my body in a way, because the chord buttons on the left-hand side feel really good for my left hand to play. I don't have much dexterity in my left hand. And the keyboard part really fits my right hand well. And that kind of led me on this journey to really investigating my disability as kind of a creative source and singing with that as well. And yeah, it kind of brought me to where I am today. And I think also what's really freeing about the organ is that I don't, I was just like looking at the question, how the disability affects it. But I feel that since there's not as much, say, a standard repertoire or not like a million people playing it, I think especially coming out of the classical music world, I can really feel super free to kind of do my own thing on it, even if it's not super, say, physical or virtuosic. But really, yeah, just do my own thing on it.
That's awesome. So a lot of what you all said leads in perfectly to our second question. So good job, team. So I would like to know if you could change anything to make your instrument or performing live more accessible to you, what would you change? Priya, you want to kick it off?
Well, I would like stages to have ramps on them because because the way I get onto a stage that doesn't have a ramp is I will literally transfer from my wheelchair onto the stage. Then one of the bandmates will pull the wheelchair up there. And then I can get in by myself, but in a live situation, I just want the help because I don't want to have to get on a stage and figure out, you get this leg here and get that, so I can do it by myself, but I prefer the help. And I just think it would be easier for musicians that aren't disabled to put their equipment. I mean, the ramps situation is universal design. It's for everyone, not just for disabled people. So I really, every DIY space, I'm like, hey, put up a ramp. It helps the musicians. They don't have to carry these heavy amps up there. They can just roll it up the stage and get it on there. So that's the one thing I would like to see change in the music world. And thank you.
How about you, Molly?
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't performed, say, too much, or I'm active as a composer in a way too, and I haven't had too many access issues, at least with mobility. But when I was thinking about this, maybe this is really dreaming and going into disability aesthetics, but I would love if there's a greater understanding of even the disability word in general. Like I feel like in classical music worlds, they're really big on pre and post concert talk, and I feel like they're throwing out this word without even a greater understanding of what it means in a way, or they're trying to avoid the word. For example, I think last month I had an audience member come up to me and say I shouldn't say disability or something when I'm talking about my work. And I just feel like they don't know how, like, I just wish they would have a greater discussion around it rather than just throwing it out and then just, I don't know if I'm making sense, but I think that would be my kind of dreaming for how to make things more accessible to especially disabled musicians and understanding where the work comes from.
Absolutely. Like, you can't start to fix something if you can't even say the word. So
yeah, I think, or just try it, like.
Yeah. How about you, Eric?
Yeah, it's always evolving. I think, Priya kind of hit on some heavy stuff where the days that I'm gonna have a hard time getting to stage, the whole crew's gonna have a rough day. Because if they have to go, down into, oh, this used to be an orchestra pit in the 17th century, and now it's our coat check area, but it's in front of the stage, and then there's a spiral staircase up. Like if it's a difficult access or prohibitively difficult access for me, it's going to be difficult for every single person in the crew, and everyone's going to have a rough time. But we're just from a access point of view, I've been carried through audiences, lifted straight up to the front of stage. I've been dropped in with a cherry picker. I've been I've gotten up onto a stage every way that you can get up onto a stage, and a lot of the time that's just by virtue of the fact that I travel with like these buff dudes that can kind of like problem solve and figure things out, but that doesn't work for everybody. So I guess I've kind of taken a little bit of a responsibility from that to be like, hey, if I had a real difficult time getting onto a stage, I like to I like to say why and kind of how and share some of that. And a lot of times, with venues, I grant a lot of leeway in terms of I can overlook that spiral staircase or that giant pit or whatever in a Victorian theater. But if I'm playing a festival that's out in the field, I know that everything got built within the last 48 hours. So every single step and elevated bathroom and platform and inaccessible point was a decision that was made by somebody within the last couple of days. So that's where I start wagging my finger and I start calling people out. But from our end, we're always kind of trying to figure out new things and new ways, and I guess I don't really fully have an answer for that. We're always trying to figure it out.
Absolutely. It can be there's that certain level of understanding when it's a historic building versus a newer one, or like you said, a festival site where things are being built actively and it's a conscious choice. Kyle, you want to fill us in?
Sure. I don't know about the instrument, what I'd change. Like, it's just been so long, it's just natural to me that I don't know if there's anything that I could change. The one thing that would have been helpful is when I was developing my pick, it was very expensive and I really couldn't develop it further or couldn't get a finished I just had to use the prototype and it worked fine, but like the affordability of stuff like that would have been very helpful at the time and point in my career doing that. So and then I agree with all the venue issues, like not necessarily for me personally, but for friends and fans, it's been an issue. And like Priya said, like the ramps just help. Like it's just when you're carrying gear, or whatever, like obviously for disability it's great, but for everyone, and it just helps.
Absolutely. It's really troublesome that so many accessibility things are priced out of what so many people can afford, and it's such a struggle that just to get like the minimum access that other people have, we have to develop these things or pay more. Priya, did you have something to follow up and share?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to comment on what Molly was saying about the word disability. It's really like something I always say. I always tell, like I'll meet a disabled person that is disabled and you'd be like, no, I'm not really disabled. I was like, no, you are disabled and you should be proud to accept that identity, because it's not a bad identity. It's just like being a woman, man, a race or whatever, it's just something else in your life that you are. So yeah, I think society needs to come to terms with the word disability. And then when that happens, I think all these things we talk about, people will be like, oh yeah, we need to do this because they're disabled. And I always just tell people, if a person of color or someone from the LGBTQ community or a woman can't get into a place, people would go absolutely insane. But as a disabled person, when I can't get in, people are like, oh, I'm sorry. And, I'm like, well, and I tell people, that's nice, you're sorry, but it's the law. I should be able to get in here. So yeah, that's my opinion about the word disability and stuff. So thank you, Molly, for that.
Right, and it's very fitting comments because again, Disability Pride Month, and we just had the 31st anniversary. It's 31 years that it's a federal law in America, at least, that disabled people have the right to be places and do things. But what the hell? That's a rant for another day. Okay, next question. Who or what inspired you to start playing music? Did you see yourself represented in music when you first started? And has that changed over time? Molly, would you like to go first?
Trying to reference a few words of notes on the questions. I'd say my inspiration is probably slightly obvious, but just I think my teachers are learning about professional composers when I was younger and seeing that it was kind of a possibility. even though I always feel like at someday I'll have to grow up and get a real job. But I don't think I saw myself that much represented, especially with disabled musicians or active ones. I would say really making a career, I think beyond school especially. And initially I really wanted to hide my disability as much as possible and not be known for it. I'd wear long sleeves all the time and not have anyone, especially in school, know about it. I think I was so upset when in undergraduate studies, they wanted to inform all the famous composers I admired for so long that I was disabled, like rather than about my music. Although now I feel like I've taken a complete 180 and really kind of embraced it first and foremost in my practice, and would almost rather be known for the disability rather than the work or something, which obviously is slightly controversial, but that's much more important for me personally. So I don't know if that's answering my questions or referencing, but that's kind of where I am now.
Awesome. How about you, Eric?
Yeah, I think Molly nailed it. I used to crop my chair out of photos and you know, kind of not not shy away from it, but not want to be directly represented or identified by it. But I mean, I started playing shows in touring many years before I was injured. Um, so you know, I'm I'm an old dog. My first show was in the mid '90s, and I got to kind of travel around the country, and never really had a thought about this because just on the touring circuits, you kind of get to know everybody that's out there pretty quickly, and there was only a handful of people that stuck out to me at the time, where that was something that I even noticed. There was a great singer-songwriter named Vic Chestnut that played for many years that unfortunately took his life a handful of years ago, but he was kind of the most prolific guy in a chair that was touring around. Um, so that's kind of what I saw then. And then when I got back into it, um, I kind of started to peel the onion back a little bit, and I did notice that there are touring musicians that represent a whole spectrum of disability that are out there at any given time. Um, Oftentimes they're not afforded the big stages or the exposure, so you don't really get a chance to see them a lot. But there's people out there that absolutely put me to shame in terms of how hard they're working and what they're dealing with. Shout out to a guy named Johnny Wheels in Eugene, who's a very high level quad that, you know, has a ventilator next to his harmonica, next to his microphone, and he's just going for it and he's killing it out there every night. Um, so I think, you know, we don't always get the luxury of being able to look directly up to somebody just because the representation can be kind of spotty within our community. So it's kind of up to us to like look side to side and build up the people that are around us in doing it so that we all kind of have a fighting chance to be exposed on the same level as everybody else. And that's what we're trying to do now.
I love it. Kyle, how about you?
Yeah, growing up, no, I didn't see anyone like me playing music. I saw it in sports a little bit, which was still inspiring to me. Like baseball player Jim Abbott has a hand like mine, and then I was more of a hockey fan, and I grew up playing hockey. And there's a local hockey player that had a hand like mine that was inspiring. But music, which was my like first love, and like no, I didn't see myself at all. And as I got older and touring, I met some more people and saw some more people that had different similar issues. But yeah, as far as like visibility when I was younger and forming my musical taste, no, I just but I kind of didn't. I don't know if I was looking for it though either. I just was kind of doing my own thing, and my I all the bands I've started have been with like close friends, so they just kind of were my people and like were there for me, and like it was never an issue. So and that's how I got into touring. It was just through them and doing my thing.
Great. How about you, Priya?
Well, I don't know. As a kid growing up, I was not disabled, but I'm Indian. And so I never saw that, and since I'm 53, like in the 70s and the 80s, there weren't that many Indians in around me. And, obviously not in media. And my mom was disabled. So disability to me was, I don't know, it just never occurred to me to hide my disability or not let people, I don't know, I just immediately was like, okay, I have this spinal cord injury and I can pull myself up and do this and do this. I can still be in my band, so I'm going to go do it. So really what got me upset was like when I wasn't able to do it. But yeah, I never saw any other disabled people in bands or, even in media of any sort, and definitely not Indians and women more. So I think that was like kind of my stepping stone into doing music was there were a lot of women musicians, like the Go-Go's and all that, all the, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the women musicians, but like, so yeah, I saw women represented, but not so much Indians and disabled people.
What is accessibility like for you when playing shows or touring? We touched on this briefly, but maybe you guys could take us in a day in the life. And how can the industry better support disabled musicians in general? Eric, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I could talk all day about this. I do feel like I kind of touched on some of that stuff a little bit already. Um, but there's a lot of stuff there's a lot of resources and stuff that's available online in terms of like what you can Google or what you can check out on Street View. Um, you guys, Half Access is kind of the first company that I can think of that look at it kind of all across the venue, and it's not just a checkbox on a Yelp page or something like that. Um, but even still, there's so much that kind of needs to be crowdsourced, and just whether or not that a venue has street access or stairs from an audience perspective, rarely translates to what it's like behind the venue and what's going on behind the stage and everything. I know it's niche. I know that it's a pretty specialized a need to kind of figure out and how to database some of that stuff. But I do have kind of exhaustive color coded notes in terms of what venues work and what don't. And we play a lot of places. When there's not all this COVID stuff going on, we're doing a couple hundred shows a year. And sometimes multiple places per day. So it's really a variety of rooms and it's all over the place. And, to be able to kind of catch all of that and advance all of that is pretty difficult. It's impossible to really send somebody out to double check all this stuff. So we do go into a lot of unknown. And I kind of have we're a pretty close knit crew and close knit musicians. So typically, we'll pull up to a venue after an overnight drive. We'll arrive somewhere at like 7 a.m. My bass player will be like, I'm going to step out of the bus and get us coffees and I'm going to go check it out. And if he's back real soon, it's usually a bad day. If he's out there a while, who knows, but usually he comes back on the bus, hands me the coffee, and it's like, it's going to be a rough one today. Or, hey, they got a door that goes right to stage, but we never know. We found that kind of no amount of calling the venue or any of that kind of stuff can really, cover any of the unpredictabilities that you're going to face as a touring person with a disability. There's one story that comes to mind, and then I'll shut up because I could talk about this stuff all day long. But we were in Madrid, Spain, at this awards show called the Los 40, the Los 40 Music Awards. And it's on par with the Latin Grammys. It's in this enormous stadium in the center of Madrid. And we arrived a little early. And unlike the American award shows, we knew that we were going to win something at this one. So we knew that we were going to receive an award, and then at the end of the ceremony, kind of at the end of the night, we were going to do a performance. So we arrived at like noon, and there was a crew that was in the middle of this, giant stadium, 25,000 person stadium, and they're fervently building this giant kind of sloping, ramp that goes up to the stage. And me and one of my guys make a joke like, "Oh, they saw you were coming, and they're making that all for you." And one of the workers overheard us that spoke English, and he's like, "Actually, no, we are making this for you." So there was a team of people that had assembled because they found out, whether it was through photos or through something that we advanced on the technical side of things. But basically, you can't expect a team full of people to be building a ramp to every venue that you show up. But sometimes it happens. And I think, when those things happen, it's because there's this conversation, and because you're demonstrating a need that maybe hasn't been demonstrated before. So, again, don't expect that at every venue. But my gosh, when something like that happens, it's incredible. And coming back to festivals the year after playing it, where maybe there were some accessibility issues, and seeing that they're resolved in the following year, or coming back to venues and seeing that they're making changes, that's 100% of why I do what I do. It's absolutely incredible to kind of see some of that stuff come together over the years.
That is an incredible story. We can only hope that all venues and events do things like that going forward. Priya, how about you?
I also could go on about this forever, like Eric. It's just I play venues, and then I play like people's houses, and then sometimes I'll play a bigger venue. And there's this guy, I don't know, I'll say his name. His name's Bill Orcutt. He's like kind of a famous, I don't know, I forgot to call him famous, but he's well known. He's a guitar player, and I'm friends with him because we played shows in our early 20s, and so I'm friends with him, and he's kind of got this bigger following, and he came down here to play this place, the Mothlight in Asheville, which is kind of a bigger venue with a really good sound system, a big stage. And I told him, I was like, okay, I'll play, but you need to like get a ramp for this show, because I am not going to crawl into the stage. So, and that's what I told because, he wanted to play with us because he's our friend. And so the owners actually rented a metal ramp so I could get on the stage easily. And then there was this acoustic experimental stand-up bass player, and he was playing, and it was mic'd, and the lows were so low it made the ramp rattle while he was playing, and I felt so bad because, and so here's like where I demanded my accessibility, that it kind of messed, I mean, he didn't do anything. He just kept playing, but I did feel bad. And he was also a friend of mine. So I was like, and then, there's other times where you can't do anything about the accessibility, because it's like, when I lived in the Bay Area, a lot of record stores, they end up using the basements, and it's like they literally have to carry me through 3 rooms, down a flight of stairs, and then my wheelchair will be at the bottom of these stairs, and then I go into this room that's in the basement. So it's just this kind of wild, like, I don't really know where I'm going and being taken, but my wheelchair will be at the bottom, and I'll play music. And so those are my experiences, playing music. And I could go on, I have lots of stories, but those are 2 stories I'll stick with. So thanks so much.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how much trust we're putting into them when we're working at these events. Like that, trusting somebody that you may have just met to carry you safely, through rooms, up and down stairs and things like that. That's a lot of trust. It'd be much easier to make your building accessible.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Kyle, how about you?
Yeah. Well, as far as the day in the life goes, I didn't necessarily have any accessibility issues with venues. But obviously, as I touched on before, I just think across the board, venues need to work harder at that. And I mean, I've played some pretty impossible venues from that standpoint, and had to make sure friends and fans have access to the show. And on top of that, I will say just across the board, I think venues just need to make sure that they're a safe space for everyone, because that's just been a huge issue across the board. And security needs to know how to help people as opposed to hurt people and enforce their whatever rules they want to enforce and be on a power trip. But yeah, in general, there's been a lot of sexism in venues, and just it's just typically, unfortunately, not a safe place for everyone. And especially coming from the punk rock background I come from, that's a huge staple of it's for everyone. And then you get to the venue and it's not. So that needs to change.
Absolutely. I think, as I also come from a punk sort of background, and I think a lot of people in that scene, even now, are they're like, yeah, we're champions for everybody, but then they just very conveniently forget that disabled people exist and that we intersect every other identity that could be had, and that anyone can become disabled. And it's like, you guys, we gotta work here. We gotta do something. Molly, would you like to answer for us?
Sure. I think similar to Kyle, I haven't had as many, say, issues with individually as a musician, or more just transporting my instrument, or it usually needs to be with an elevator and everything. But I'd say most of the issues have come up when trying to make my own works accessible in a way, especially because I'm creating really new work grounded in disability. And so many times I feel like I've had to pay for that out of my artistic fee. So it's kind of an awkward conversation with the presenter, and maybe part of that's not my fault for not building it into the budget early enough. But it always feels like you're asking for such an extra thing to have, like captioning or ASL interpretation, or making sure the ramp is wheelchair accessible, which I feel like, and I feel like a lot of other disabled artists talk about, is really an extra burden in a way. I think especially as an emerging artist, you're so grateful for the opportunity anyway. And part of I feel like if I could have a dream, would be to have an accessibility fund for any disabled artist to get funding for those accessibility measures, rather than always contemplating, should I reduce my artist fee for myself? I think, which takes away really vital financing to, have sustainable careers, and have some external source, rather than always this debate of asking the presenter or not, or feeling like you're asking for such an extra expense. I think that would be really an amazing gift to disabled musicians and artists overall.
I think an artist fund is an incredible idea, and I would love to see something like that happen. Our final official question before we get to some chat Q&A ones is, what advice do you have for disabled people who want to play music? Kyle, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. My advice is, if you want to play music, you can, and you should do it. That's the coolest thing about music, is that it's, there's so much variety and it's very subjective. So, I mean, don't hold yourself to everyone else's standards. You can make music that works for you and that you can make, and you should just go for it, because you'll be able to make something cool that you like eventually if you just keep working at it.
Priya?
Yeah, like Kyle, I just think disabled people can be anything they want. They just have to figure out how to do it. And so as we talked about people that seeing disabled people in bands and how they influence, if we were inspired by it. But currently, here's 4 disabled people that play music, and we're going to influence someone that's disabled. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, she's in a wheelchair, or he's in a wheelchair, or, his hand is like this and her hand, so that's we are essentially the people right now that are setting the example for the generation younger than us. So I yeah, I always tell people, hey, because we talk about the punk scene. When you're an outsider, that's like that's where you like fit in as a person if you're an outsider. And I'm like, imagine the disabled kids that are feeling like outsiders and they want to be somewhere, like make it accessible so they can take part in what's going on here, and they can be part of the community. So I would tell a disabled person, figure out how to do it your own way, and it'll make it unique and awesome and better than what anyone else is doing.
Wise words, wise words. Molly, how about you?
Yeah, I would say this might be kind of cheesy, but just to like never give up in a way. I think especially beyond school in a way, it can be frustrating. I think sometimes just, I don't know, the daily or little tasks you have to do to really pursue a career as a musician, and just to never lose sight of kind of the long-term goal. I remember at one time I read an interview with the painter Amy Sherrill, who painted like Michelle Obama's portrait, and I think she didn't get that commission until she was like 40 at least or something. And she said, I just stuck around long enough for something, which really resonated with me, just to really build that long-term success, and to also never, I was gonna say, I would never get discouraged really as a disabled person in general, which might be slightly obvious, but to never feel like you're too weird or too odd to fit in. I think you're really on the right side of history, and really doing something very important, at least for my opinion.
And Eric?
Yeah, everyone else just took the words out of my mouth. Just try not to get discouraged, try not to get cynical. We have to deal with a lot. And I think that's just kind of the nature of prejudices, especially if you have a visible disability. I've gotten right off of a main stage that I had quite literally just finished playing. And then I've been told by security people that I'm a fire hazard, or I need to move, or I need to get out of the way. The little things that we have to deal with throughout the day can seem really overwhelming. And there's been situations where I've been in a recording studio ready to play something, and I can just see myself getting overlooked, just because I'm kind of sitting there in a chair. But I can always wake them up with my playing. Like I know that, and I think as disabled people, we deal with all that kind of stuff on a regular basis, and if anything, it just makes you stronger and more capable than anyone else out there that's doing the same thing. We're exercising that stuff every day, and we're doing push-ups in the parking lot and staying strong. So just knock them out with your playing and do whatever you want. Find a way to make art. I do really feel like being able to kind of step out of a way that things are supposed to be done or played is just crucial. And it honestly, I think objectively makes for the best art 99 times out of 100. Kurt Cobain did not really know how to play his guitar. Jimi Hendrix played upside down and backwards. Find a way to do it, find a way to make it thrilling, and I don't feel like anything that you're doing, if you're coming at it from a different kind of point of view, is wrong. It's different, and sometimes different is spectacular and extraordinary. So that's about it.
Fantastic. I think we only have time for one question from the Q&A. We'll see. So do any of you, open to anyone, do any of you or your bandmates have hearing loss? What sort of accommodations do you find in venues for situations where somebody might be hard of hearing or deaf?
I'll go, I guess. I can't imagine us not having a little bit of hearing loss. I personally haven't had any issues or been tested, but it takes its toll. And again, coming back to the affordability issues, like musicians' earplugs are rather expensive, like custom earplugs, and so that was always a deterrent from getting them. I have seen some venues do sell earplugs, and then I guess some venues are kind of aware at the decibels that they're projecting, but that's kind of rare. That's what I've seen.
Yeah, our whole band and crew is on in-ear monitors, which I feel, they're basically a wireless pack with in-ears that go up, and it's basically, a way to keep the stage a little quieter, keep the venue a little bit louder, and to be able to hear yourself and hear your other musicians. And that technology gets a little bit better. It's not quite there yet, I don't think, to where the fidelity and the broadcasting ability could cover, um, people's ears within the crowd. But it's certainly a conversation that's been had. So I think we're close. I think people are thinking about this stuff. I don't personally tour with anybody that self-identifies as a hearing loss individual, but we all certainly have to crank them in the ears to hear what we're doing after 20 years or so of it. So it is something that I kind of follow, and that I'm very curious about. And I know that there's conversations around it, and I'm excited to see how technology kind of pushes that, because I think it is important. And I want to see what's next and see where the technology goes.
I play in loud places, and I know I should use earplugs, but when I'm playing, I feel like I can't hear. I don't know. I don't feel that connected to the drummer and stuff. Like I really have to hear them. So I choose not to use earplugs. And I'm fortunate. Like, I don't know, my hearing is okay. I can hear things, so I don't have that issue. And I do have this fan in Asheville, this woman, her name's Monse, and she's deaf, and she's like, "You're my favorite band." And I'm always like curious. I want to ask her, like, what is it about? I don't know. I don't know what it is about our band, but she's like, "I love your band. It's so amazing." And I'm like, and I really want to sit and talk, but I've never had a chance to sit and talk to her because it's like at a show. And so I would love to talk to her one day and be like, what is it about our band? Because she's deaf. And so I'm like wondering what she's experiencing that draws her in so much. So I'm not sure what the accommodation question, whether it's just accommodating bands for that, or whether it's just accommodating everybody that's deaf or hard of hearing. But the only thing I've ever seen are just earplugs. I don't know how deaf and hard of hearing people can be accommodated as far as seeing the band and listening to it, and maybe captions for lyrics or something like that. So yeah, I don't know, but I've never seen that anywhere I've been to yet.
Does anyone have any closing remarks they'd like to make before I wrap things up? Anyone can jump in.
Well, I already warned you guys I talk a lot, so I'll just talk. I just think it's really important, like the four of us, and I know there's other disabled musicians and people that represent our community to non-disabled people. I think it's so important for us. I don't know, like Eric had said something about all this stuff, and I was like thinking, yeah, we're like the people that are representing how, in this world that's really not accessible enough to us yet, we're overcoming our obstacles and doing it. And I feel like we're the trailblazers for the next generation. We'll make it easier for them to be in a band and do what they want. So that's my closing remark.
I just want to thank Half Access and Music Portland for hosting this. It's really like such an incredible honor. I don't think I've had a conversation with other just disabled musicians, and I don't even know, at least a year or so. So it's really just so invigorating, and I really can't thank you all enough for hosting this and also having accessibility with it and interpreters as well. And yeah, it's just been really fun.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Half Access too. I think what you all are doing is great, and thanks so much for having these panels. They're awesome.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the platform.
Yeah, this has been great. Thank you to have asked us and all of you. This has been awesome. So I really appreciate being here. I think this is an important thing to do.
Well, unfortunately, we have reached the end of our time together. I'm personally very upset about that because I'm sure all of us could go forever about these issues. Just to remind everyone, we're hosting an after panel discussion space on the Have Access Discord server. There's a link in the chat here on Zoom. Feel free to share your thoughts or any additional questions whenever you want. Thank you again to our fantastic panelists for being with us today and sharing their stories. Thank you to Music Portland for running their tech, and to Hopeless Records and Subcity for sponsoring this, and Steffi and Selena for interpreting for us. Thank you all for tuning into our panel. Our next one will be the last Saturday in August with a focus on disabled fans. And we will also be sharing a feedback form in the chat and on our Discord if you could take a minute to fill it out. Get vaccinated if you haven't already, and if you are able to, keep wearing your masks. This is how we protect disabled people and have shows come back, which we all want. And thank you again for being here, and we all hope you have a wonderful day.